This powerful 13-inch Ultrabook was giving me quite the hard time while testing it for two reasons. One of which could be fixed in the future and the other almost had me replacing the product. So let's talk about that.
This is Hubwood.
So the newest version of MSI's Prestige 13 series comes with Intel's brand new so-called Intel Core Ultra 7 155H CPU, and whoever was responsible for that name should get a raise. They should get fired. Well, however, despite the confusing new naming, this CPU is very promising in terms of performance per watt and its overall specs with a whopping 16 cores and 22 threads. Whereas it has two new low power efficiency cores designed for lighter tasks and idling, as well as 8 regular E-cores and 6 P-cores which support hyperthreading. And this CPU in here also sports Intel's new integrated Arc iGPU with 128 EU's execution units and 8 Xe cores, which should be the fastest integrated graphics as of today. Should. More on that in a bit. PS, the CPU also offers the new NPU technique for AI tasks, though full disclosure, I didn't test that in today's review. Furthermore, today's tested version, the Prestige 13 AI Evo A1MG, comes with 32GB soldered DDR5 6400 Mhz Ram, a fast 1TB PCIE Gen 4 SSD with a reading speed of up to 7GB per second and 5GB per second for the writing speed according to Crystal Diskmark. A bright and colorful 13-inch OLED 16:10 display with 2880 by 1800 pixels. A pretty beefy 75Wh battery, a 65W USB-C charger, Windows Hello and Tobii eye tracking, Wi-Fi 7, a fingerprint sensor within the power button, and of course an activated Windows 11 Home Edition. PS, the RAM is not upgradable and there is no second M.2 slot, unfortunately. It costs around $1,300 in the US and 1,600 euros in Europe. Why the f***? Oh, by the way, if you haven't yet subscribed, let me just quickly show you how that is done.
Rated M for immature content.
The overall well-built and subtle designed laptop comes in a magnesium aluminum alloy covered case in either this dark gray color or in white alternatively, and it only weighs like 990 grams or 2.2 pounds, while almost precisely having the size of a sheet of A4 paper. It is also very thin with 16.9mm in height, but it is still a pretty powerful laptop nevertheless. Opening the Prestige 13 with one hand works perfectly, since the hinge seems to be balanced just right and makes a really good impression. The display also seems to be sturdy, though pressing on the top of the laptop when it's closed is bending the chassis by quite a bit. But the overall build quality is quite adequate for this price region. The rather small white illuminated keyboard has a nice key travel and worked pretty well for me since I was able to write at my usual speed almost immediately. There is some flex to the keys, but the screen doesn't wobble even when writing fast and firm. The perfectly centered touchpad made a great impression and provided a very satisfying click feel and good response to any finger movement and gestures. I also want to point out that the fingerprint sensor over here worked immediately every time I used it. Now, MSI calls this a 2.8K screen due to its 2880 by 1800 pixel resolution. By the way, ASUS calls this 3K and Apple used to call this resolution Retina, even on a 15-inch display. However, the pixel density is pretty high with around 261 pixels per inch compared to the 140 pixels per inch on a standard 15-inch Full HD screen. I've measured a maximum brightness of 450 nits and an almost flawless color accuracy for all color spaces, so professional graphic design and such would be perfectly doable if you're okay with doing it on this rather small 13-inch screen, that is. Now, since this is a very small Ultrabook, the connection variety isn't amazing but sufficient. On the left we're getting an HDMI 2.1 port which supports up to 8K at 60 Hz and 4K at 120 Hz. Then we have two USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports with DisplayPort support, whereas one of them is used for charging the laptop, and a 3.5mm audio jack. On the right side, we're only getting a USB 3.2 port and a micro SD card reader. If you're looking for a good and reliable USB-C hub for this laptop, let me suggest the Prestige 13-in-1, which I just reviewed, and I will provide a link in the description below.
And by the way, this is what the integrated camera looks like and what the integrated microphone sounds like.
P.S. There is a kill switch for the camera right next to it, which is always nice to have. The two decent 2-watt speakers provide a very clear sound, and they can get pretty loud considering the size of the laptop, though as expected the sound is still a bit too flat. But overall I would really consider it is a bit above average compared to other laptop speakers in this price range. The 75 Wh battery in the MSI Prestige 13 can provide good runtimes thanks to the new Intel Core Ultra 7 155H and its low power efficiency cores. With 20% display brightness and activated Wi-Fi, I was getting around 20 hours of runtime while using the battery saving mode in the MSI Center. That means the laptop only draws around 3.75 watts in total in that state, which is pretty impressive. Watching YouTube at 50% brightness with the full 1800p resolution with headphones at 20% loudness resulted in around 7.2 hours of runtime, which means the laptop's total power draw in that situation is around 10 watts. So it is quite persistent enough for a whole day doing some lighter work stuff, I guess. And the good thing is that you could use a USB-C power bank to further improve these battery times. Now let's talk about the fan noise and temperatures for a while. I was mentioning having a hard time testing the Prestige 13 earlier, and one of the reasons for that was the cooling fan. Because after the first day of testing the laptop, this fan started to rattle, like really noticeable. It was like hearable all the time for around a whole day, especially when the fan was running at a low speed. I was about to send the laptop back because I thought it was broken, but somehow it suddenly stopped rattling before I was able to record it, and it hadn't repeated that behavior ever since. So it might just have been some small part inside or caused by transportation or some production error, which was now fine, I don't know. But I just wanted to mention it as it really was quite disturbing. When everything is working as intended, the MSI Prestige 13 is super silent though. It provides a vast variety of fan and power modes and allows you to configure the fan speed when using the performance mode. But while doing office stuff and watching YouTube, you can barely hear the fan as it is that silent. But at max speed, the fan really ramps up a lot and gets super loud while also keeping the temps at a much lower level. I also have to mention that the chassis over here is getting very warm above the keyboard with up to 47 degrees Celsius near that OLED sticker right here, and even around 42 degrees Celsius for the W key when the laptop is under heavy gaming load for a while. The laptop has only one fan and only one vent to release the air at the back of the laptop right here, which actually blows the hot air directly onto the screen over here when the laptop is open. And then of course there are a few intake grids at the bottom. A quick note on the included Tobii eye tracking, which is installed over here. I was not able to use it in games because some games actually support that, but only for some basic stuff like privacy, meaning that if turned on, the display locks itself and gets blurry once you turn yourself away from the laptop or walk away. It can also do so if it recognizes someone else watching your monitor from behind, which will come in handy for some people, I guess. Now let's talk about the performance. Waking up the MSI Prestige 13 from sleep takes only 1 second, while booting into Windows when it's completely shut down takes around 17 seconds. In Cinebench R23 I did get up to 12,000 points using the performance mode, both plugged in and on battery. Though with the balanced and silent mode, something weird was happening as the results have actually been better on battery. I triple checked that and I have to assume that MSI made a mistake with the power settings for these modes. So take the balanced mode and silent mode results with a grain of salt. Interestingly, I got a higher single core score than other reviewers like Jared's Tech, while that might be because they were using an engineering sample, I guess. In PC Mark X, I was getting up to 6,502 points using the performance mode when the laptop was plugged in, and 5095 points on battery. Here the score for the balanced mode when plugged in was a bit higher than on battery. And up to 6500 points means that this is quite the responsive and powerful Ultrabook, as it will be fast enough to do basically everything, even some basic video editing and 3D rendering, especially with the pre-installed 32GB of RAM. Oh, and here is some comparison of the maximum PC Mark X scores I received on other laptops lately. Now, the other issue that really gave me a headache when testing the MSI Prestige 13 was testing the gaming performance and the CPU/GPU wattage while doing so. The main reason for me getting this laptop was to test the new Intel Arc integrated graphics, but for this laptop the maximum long-term wattage for the CPU package seemed to be only 20 watt. I was not able to fix this the same way like ETA Prime, even with the advanced BIOS settings that he used. Sometimes I was able to get like 30 watt at the beginning of my testing, which then throttled down to 20 watt after a short amount of time, which is, by the way, the minimum guaranteed wattage for the CPU according to the Intel website. While it is still providing amazing results for 3D Mark Firestrike and 3D Mark Time Spy, with results way faster than, for example, the AMD Z1 Extreme and its RX 780M, in real gaming environments, the Arc graphics in this laptop can't keep up at all, even with the 32GB of RAM at 6400 MHz. It's probably more comparable to an older Iris Xe with 96 EUs when utilized at 20 watt. I mean, some games are playable, though actually turning off the hyperthreading for the CPU and the BIOS kinda helped it calming down the frame times and providing a more stable experience, at least for me. While some games like Cyberpunk 2077, well, they're not really playable really well. And it's just stuttering too much at this low wattage. That is because the core clock of this iGPU then drops down to like 800 to 1000 MHz every few seconds in some games, resulting in pretty heavy stuttering, unfortunately. It was really weird, as sometimes games would just run okay and then just start stuttering again out of nowhere. I'm pretty sure it's not caused by the temperatures, as with the max fan speed, the CPU is around 65 to 70 degrees Celsius, which is perfectly fine. It just seems as if MSI decided to run this laptop CPU at its lowest wattage in the long run, and I will have to get another laptop in the future for a more thorough test on the gaming capability of the new Intel Arc integrated graphics. Though, after all, this might be an issue of the MSI Prestige 13 and could maybe fixed in the future with BIOS and driver updates, we will see. However, here's a small variety of games I tested and the experience I had doing so.
In Forza Horizon 5, I actually thought that it would be playable just fine. And if you're not using metrics that show the frame time graph, you might at first think so as well. But if you pay some attention, you will notice that the GPU's core clock is falling and climbing so drastically that this results in unstable frame rates, noticeable stuttering, and some time-bending lag-like effect, which makes it impossible to play the game in a sophisticated way. For this, I was testing it at 1080p and low settings. The only thing that probably could help here would be to lower the resolution and cap the FPS. But I mean, for that you would not need the world's fastest iGPU in theory. So even though the FPS are in the 40s and 60s most of the time, the core clock drops due to the low power limit, destroying the experience here. Now, I was really surprised to find out that Red Dead Redemption 2 was kinda working perfectly though at 1080p with FSR on performance in low settings with high texture quality. For some reason, this game was working perfectly fine and the weird GPU clock behavior didn't seem to occur at all. And I really don't understand it, as other games were kinda problematic, as you will see in a bit. Could it be that Intel is offering really unoptimized drivers yet again? But what about Counter-Strike 2? It was actually kinda playable with around 60 to 80 FPS at 1080p and low settings, and I didn't see too many frame drops despite a few little stutters here and there in a deathmatch against some bots on Dust 2. I was also testing the new free-to-play survival game LEGO Fortnite, which is already quite popular, and it was actually playable okay for the most part. I chose 1080p with some resolution scaling, while still being able to maintain acceptable graphics with a mix of medium and low settings, and the numbers being around 40 FPS. As this game is based 100% on the Fortnite engine, it should behave more or less identical in Fortnite. And since the game also offers a performance mode, you could surely reach okay FPS for the Fortnite Battle Royale game. However, for this Valheim clone, I wanted to get some eye candy over high FPS. And Hogwarts Legacy? Well, at 1080p with low settings and FSRM performance, it has been quite the roller coaster ride, with the FPS going up to over 50 FPS and sometimes down to like 10 or 11 FPS with the same settings. The performance is just way too inconsistent for most games to be playable.
I really hope that MSI will be able to fix that somehow. I mean, I am fully aware that this is not a gaming laptop by any means, but still, well, at least some games seem to be playable, while others just aren't. In conclusion, I would like to state that beside the temporary fan rattling and the fact that gaming on this device only makes sense to some small extent, there haven't been any real issues otherwise, and the newest MSI Prestige 13 really is a great ultrabook with good battery times, a decent build quality, a lot of cool features and a great screen in my opinion. If you're buying it for US prices, because 1,600 euros for the European market, that's just pretty mean. And well, who knows, maybe future BIOS or driver updates will fix stuff. Alright, and that's all for today. If this content was helpful for you, think about subscribing so you won't miss upcoming laptop reviews and benchmarks. That would help like a lot. Especially considering the new Intel Arc iGPU once I can get a faster laptop for that. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye bye and tschüss. Waking up the MSI Prestige 13 when testing the MSI Prestige 13.